Okay, so we've looked at how the platonic solids organize atomic structures. We've seen how it organizes galactic structures. And just to be clear, we can use the platonic solids to look at full galaxies. There's actually, if you look closely at images of spiral galaxies, a lot of the time you can see that they're not really clean spirals. There's actually straight edges. And you can see, yes, it's spiraling. Yes, there's a swirling circle, spherical thing in there, but the energy actually hits like a line. And a lot of them are pentagons, a lot of them are hexagons. You can see the line. So these structures, again, every scale of reality. And so where are they at a more human scale? Well, Buckminster Fuller and a sculptor, architect named Kenneth Snelson. Yes, his name is Nelson with an S in front of it, Snelson. It's no explaining some names. They worked together to develop this concept of tensegrity. And so tensegrities are all about tension and compression. The defining phrase of tensegrity is islands of compression within a sea of tension. And so tensegrity itself is a portmanteau of the words tension and integrity. And so it's the tension that allows the structure to maintain its integrity. And so the most famous example is a geodesic dome. And so Buckminster Fuller, probably his most famous invention is the geodesic dome, which is pictured in the lower left here, the largest space encompassing dome ever built, right? I think it was the World's Fair at some point. So then in this structure, this is something designed by Snelson, and it is gravitationally improbable, isn't it? Like, you know, it's linked to the ground over here, but why is it, why, how's that a freestanding structure? It's because of the tensegrity quality of it. And so one of the defining features of tensegrity is that it's independent of gravity. So, okay. The concept of tensegrity can be applied equally to architecture and sculpture as to human anatomy and physiology. And when we apply it to, and not just human, but anatomy and animal anatomy and physiology generally. And so when we do that, we call it biotensegrity. And I've got a great book here by Graham Scarr. Let's show that to the Zoom people. Graham Scarr, Biotensegrity, magical book. Amazing stuff in there. And then the other one to show you guys from before is Kepler's Harmonies of the World. You can still get a copy of it. It's a pretty thin little book, but has a bunch of like magical information in it. Okay. So there are three definitions. There are three requirements for something to be considered a tensegrity structure. This is a tensegrity structure. This thing here. Ooh, so fun. Okay, and so let's just talk about this for a moment. So what you can see here is none of the struts of this structure, none of these little poles are touching each other. They're held in a web of tension. These are islands. The sticks are islands of compression within a sea of tension. The sea of tension being created by the elastic bands here. And this creates some pretty remarkable qualities. One is that it's independent of gravity. Like this, if you think about a building where you need like a stack of bricks, right? There has to be a solid ground and gravity pulling it down to hold it in place and keep the stack of bricks where it is, and otherwise it's going to collapse. Where if it, all of a sudden, went into zero gravity, it would like fly apart, right? Unless there was some like stickiness, some sort of tension there. Whereas this structure can go anywhere. You can set it like this, you can set it like that. It's independent. It doesn't need gravity to hold its structural integrity. The other remarkable feature is that if I put pressure anywhere, the whole thing responds. Every other component of the structure responds when I put pressure on it. And so this gives it incredible like tensile strength, right? It can absorb lots of pressure without breaking because the whole system adjusts. And this is why tensegrity, biotensegrity, is such an accurate model for anatomy. Because what happens if you push here, like my whole body responds. And so like you see it where like I have broke my toe playing soccer decades ago, and that little imbalance, then my whole body responds. So now my ankle's out of place and my knee is inverted and my shoulder's off, and it ripples throughout the system, right? And so this is both a source of incredible resilience and like vulnerability in my case. But it also means that I don't have to fix my shoulder, I need to fix my toe, right? And so any point of influences the whole system. And this is just an accurate model of reality in general, right? This interwoven web of all beings where you cannot change anything without changing everything. And so this is a big focus in Buckminster Fuller's work. He was always looking for the trim tab. And the trim tab is the tiny little flap that is on the back. It's part of the rudder of really big ships. And so if you've ever seen like a big ocean liner, it takes them sometimes like hundreds of miles to turn around, right? And so the rudder has to turn very slowly. And in order to prepare that rudder to turn, there's this little trim tab that's like the first thing to move. It's the point of maximum leverage. And so if you're going to try to change a system, if you're going to try to change your posture, if you're going to try to change your diet, your habits, your life, you're just going to try to change politics or the environment, whatever, you want to be looking for the trim tab. What's the point of greatest leverage, trusting that no matter where you push, you're going to change the whole system? Where's the point of greatest leverage in that system? That's the trim tab, and that's the beauty of tensegrity structures. And the suggestion is that because reality is organized this way, and oh, by the way, tensegrity structures are completely dependent and defined by Platonic solids. That should just be obvious at this point, because these are structures of maximal efficiency, and nature operates according to the law of least effort, right? It uses the straightest line between 2 points, the path of least resistance. And so because space itself is structured this way, reality itself is structured this way, even if we don't think we've organized society as a tensegrity structure, it is one. And so that's where, like with supply chain issues, for example, there are trim tabs that we've seen, like one little thing goes out of alignment and the whole thing falls apart, doesn't it? And so that's a point of great leverage. And so if we were a little bit more intelligent about how we organized our social structures and organizations and all this, then we could design these more resilient structures that could withstand more pressure, more pounds per square inch of pressure without breaking. Just like it's a good thing our spinal cords are not organized like a stack of bricks, right? I've heard a meditation teacher, like, imagine your spine as a stack of coins. Like, oh, that kind of helps me sit up more straight to feel like there's a stack of gold coins back there. But thank goodness it's not that, because you poke sideways at a stack of coins and it completely collapses, right? Whereas my spine, yours too, is multi-dimensionally flexible and adaptable, and it can receive pressure from any direction and adapt appropriately, and can withstand incredible amount of stress and torque and all these different angles of pressure and stress. But it's a resilient system that is distributing the force as widely and efficiently as possible. And so even when, like, you see it in like football games, or you see these horrific falls, you see like gymnasts who go up and like fall on their neck, and then they get up and walk away because that force was distributed equally, and the fascial network was able to, the fascial network is really the tension that holds the bones in, which are the islands of compression, right? And so our bodies are these tensegrity networks. They are tensegrity structures. Okay, I'm rambling, but let's define a tensegrity structure here. Okay, 3 definitions. 1, tensegrity structure is a continuous, connective, tensioned network supporting discontinuous compression struts. So all of these rubber bands are connected. They're all talking to each other. They're all exchanging tension. You can't pluck one without plucking the whole thing. Just like on a harp, you pluck one string and all the strings around it start to vibrate, right? You can't actually play a single note. On a piano or a guitar, like, you pluck one string, all the strings are vibrating. That's how harmony works. And so, okay, a continuous connective tension network supporting discontinuous struts, right? So the web of tension has to be continuous, but the struts, the islands of compression, must be islands to qualify as a tensegrity structure. A geodesic dome, which Fuller considers to be a tensegrity, has multiple compression struts which meet at a central hub, but they are discontinuously connected, right? So they're not transferring compression loads. So it's not like a stack of bricks which transfers compression in a line, right? Where a geodesic dome is, they are discontinuously connected, so they're radiating out, if that makes sense. Again, a little bit on the technical side, takes a minute to imagine it. So in geodesic domes, tension forces travel along the outer edges of the struts, which are continuous and form the web of tension. Okay, yeah. Number 2, all tensegrities are pre-stressed under tension. They are self-supporting and independent of gravity. So the weight of the structure adds to the pre-stress. As you increase the weight load, the tensegrity tightens and gets smaller. So as I compress this, it's compressing as the tension increases. And like, if this were, the size of this building, the amount of pre-stress would increase accordingly. Yeah. So this is Lawrence Hecht here, who we're following, and he's just talking about the practicality of building life-size models, and it takes a lot to build a life-size model of a human in the form of tensegrity structures. Takes like the stress necessary expands exponentially, and so you need heavier and heavier struts, and it presents really practical obstacles, which just points to the sort of magic of a human body to begin with. And then the third requirement to be considered a tensegrity structure is that a tensegrity is self-contained. It's a self-contained, non-redundant whole system. All components are dynamically linked such that forces are translated instantly everywhere. A change in one part is reflected throughout. These features distinguish tensegrities from other tension structures, like a radio mast or a sailboat mast, for example, is fixed at the base and needs that fixed point to keep it upright. The boat does not need the mast for its integrity, but the reverse is not true, right? So that's a tension structure, but it's not a tensegrity structure, because every part of a tensegrity is reliant on the entire structure for its continued existence. So with this, if I snip one of these, the whole thing falls apart. So tensegrity is an applied principle. It is a map of the nature of structure. If tensegrity is seen not so much as a building system as it is a description of the most efficient way that all form is organized in terms of most economical use of energy and material, then we would expect nature to utilize this principle universally. And our task is to determine exactly how this might have been achieved at each scale of the continuum. So we've looked at that, right? We've looked at cosmic scale, we've looked at atomic scale, we're now looking at human scale. So in the human body, the fascial web composed of collagen and elastin fibers organizes and holds every cell in place, defining its mechanical environment and spatial relationship to its neighbors. So like in this model or in these models, the bones are the islands of compression, and the web, the sea of compression, islands of compression in a sea of tension, fascia. Yeah. And of course, ligaments and muscles and all that, but the fascial network is fundamental. And this is the basis for healing modalities like structural integration, Rolfing. And there's a wonderful guy named Tom Myers who does amazing anatomy stuff. What is this thing called? Anyway, look up Tom Myers anatomy, and he's deep into biotensegrity, fascial networks, and it's all about platonic solids. It's all the fascial networks are defined by platonic solids. It's extraordinary. So the fascial web is an intricate three-dimensional web of tension organizing around strong bones that resist compression. The skeletal system is organized, balanced, and suspended within the fascial web, which is a sea of tension containing islands of compression. The 206 bones that constitute our skeleton are pulled up against the force of gravity and stabilized in a vertical form by the pull of fascia, tensile muscles, tendons, ligaments. Very similar to this structure, right? It's like this structure and this spinal cord are basically the same thing. And that's why this structure can stand at this odd angle, and why I can, like looking at like circus performers, like how can they do some of that stuff? The humans doing this because of this. Yeah. Right. So there's a guy named Donald Ingber, and he's a professor of pathology at Harvard Medical School, and he's published research, cellular research, finding conclusive evidence that tensegrity provides the best explanation for the cytoskeleton of the cell, its movement and behavior. So here we have it working on a cellular level. So when the web of tension gets tight, the cell responds by adjusting its shape. So imagine this is a red blood cell floating around in your bloodstream, blah, blah, blah. But when there's too many red blood cells, the web of tension gets tight and the cell compresses. And so when the cell is compressed, it changes its shape, and that changed shape determines form determines function, and that changed shape eventually initiates instructions for apoptosis. So the changed shape then gives different cellular instructions that says, oh, it's too crowded in here, I'm gonna pop out of existence, which is apoptosis, right? Where cellular death. And so when that system gets distorted, that's when we get cancers and tumors and this sort of thing. Whereas on the other hand, if the tension is too loose, there aren't enough red blood cells, then it actually expands into space, and that structure eventually will say, hey, time to reproduce, time to what's that word? Mitosis. Time for mitosis. And so when there's not enough cells around, it stretches, and cool, that then, it's like it stretches, and then, oh, this little door opens and sends the instructions for mitosis, and then we have cell division, and that's how we maintain equilibrium. Yeah, that makes sense? Yeah, Sam.
Is that from the Harvard professor?
That's from the professor of pathology at Harvard Medical School, publishing evidence that that's how it works. It's really cool, isn't it? Yeah, and just makes so much sense. And of course, just to note for our purposes, the fact that tensegrity structures are unerringly composed of one or another of the platonic solids, mostly tetrahedrons. And so, yeah, there's special favor for the tetrahedron, octahedron, and icosahedron, which again are all the ones composed of triangles and water, fire, air, right? The three that we talked about that are most active, most interchangeable, just exchanging triangles. And sure enough, physical structures, biological structures do the best when there's triangulation. So the tetrahedron, octahedron, icosahedron are the ones that are made of triangles, as the cube and dodecahedron are not stable without triangular bracing. So if you've ever done like construction or something, you build a window frame, you got to brace it with you got to make a triangle out of it, basically, to make it stable. So, okay, that brings us to the conclusion of part 4. Any questions, comments, confusion, enthusiasm? It's making sense, yeah? Yeah. So we've defined what are dimensions. We've defined what shape are those dimensions. What's the shape of space? Then what do those shapes do? And then how do they show up in reality, observable, verifiable reality? And then we can see that they're in outer space, they're at the subatomic level, atomic level, cellular level, human level, structural level. We could be designing cities using these principles. So that's where we are. And where we're going now, we've looked at the what, right? We see what it is, how it works, but where does this geometry come from? Why does it look like this? So that's part 5 coming up right now.